Tiger fans, you're now tuned in to Tiger Rag Television, your source for the latest in LSU sports, in-depth game analysis, engaging interviews, and all things Tiger Nation. It's time to talk some LSU sports. Let's get ready for your Tiger Rag hosts, Jim Inkster, Chelsea Brumfield, Jeff Palermo, Ron Higgins, and Tyler Nunez.
Welcome to Tiger Rag Television. I'm Chelsea Brumfield, and do we have a show for y'all today? Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers are undefeated, going up against a matchup with Texas A&M this Saturday. Now, Joe and the Tigers are hoping to complete an undefeated season, something they have not achieved as a university in over 60 years. We're going to be covering this matchup coming up on Saturday, of course, here with our Tiger Rag staff. But first, this week's Crossfire with Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag columnist. Jim, what are y'all talking about today?
11-0. It's palpable what can be accomplished by this team. And the quarterback, Joe Burrow, perhaps on his way to the Heisman, probably so. Possibly the first player taken in the NFL draft early next year. But what does he have to gain? This is all accomplished. He can win the national championship, but he has a lot to lose if he were to get hurt. Glenn Guilbeau and I will talk about the implications if Joe Burrow, something really bad happens to him.
It's always an interesting conversation when you and Glenn get together, so y'all do not want to miss that. Stick around. We'll be right here after the break. In this week's Crossfire debate, Jim Inkster sits down with Glenn Guilbeau, Tiger Rag columnist, to talk about the future of Joe Burrow. We know he's an athlete that puts it all on the line, but does the risk outweigh the great benefit?
Tiger Rag Crossfire.
Tiger Rag columnist and USA Today Network writer Glenn Guilbeau, the beat writer for the LSU football Tigers, one of the dean of sports writers in this great land of ours, and he's been covering Joe Burrow, who stands to be the first Heisman Trophy winner at LSU in 60 years, 1959 to 2019. You weren't even alive the last time Billy Ab Cannon was running through the Ole Miss defense into the history books. But Joe Burrow's got it made. No, I think if he went down in practice tomorrow, he's the Heisman winner. 4,014 yards passing, 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and almost an 80% completion record. Stats that are cartoonish. But the question is, how much does he have to gain by playing the rest of the season? He's going to be the first player taken in the draft. He's got the Heisman Trophy all but wrapped up. Why should he keep going? He might take the risk of being like Tua. What do you think, Glenn Guilbeau?
Well, I don't know if he's the first player picked yet. Some people say that. He has a chance for that. But no, the players that you see that leave before the bowl, it's when it's not in the playoffs or the championship game. But you bring up a good point. I mean, if you're really that concerned about your well-being, so what how important the game is? It's just illogical. You have to finish your season. I don't like when the players don't finish the last bowl, even if it's unimportant. But if that continues to happen, what I think they ought to do is let the high school players who sign early in December play in the bowl, the early enrollees. I mean, that's fair. Derek Stingley could have played in the bowl last year, and he would have been just as good.
I don't know that
anybody.
He would have been ready, but he could
have. He would have been ready.
He could have. Well, he hasn't been ready every game this year.
Well,
that Alabama game is evidence of that. But
it gets him ready. I know what you're saying. That Tua hurt himself, but that's part of the game. You have to deal with that, and he's still going to get drafted. He may not get drafted as high if he comes out this year, but he's going to have time to get better and go through the combines and so forth, and he'll still be drafted high.
Oh, he'll be drafted high, but he risks having career problems. He had a very serious injury. A hip injury is one of the worst that a player can have, and Tua Tagovailoa has to overcome that. And Nick Saban is getting a whole lot of grief for playing him, and he did come back less than 3 weeks from surgery, so that is a distinction, but
different injury, though.
Different injury, and Joe Burrow's not hurt, but he could get hurt. And right now he's on top of the world. Miles Brennan, according to his coaches, is just as good or almost as good. Do you really believe that?
No. I don't know of a coach who said that. No, that's not the case. And it'll be real interesting to see if Joe Brady, the pass game coordinator, can get really good play out of Miles Brennan, because that would really prove his system, and you just fit the players in it. But the LSU quarterback position is a big question mark going into next season.
Well, as much as I doubt that Joe Burrow has much to gain by playing, he could win a national title, and that's something no one can ever take away from you. And the truth is, he's going to continue playing, and he's an enormously competitive guy. So LSU doesn't have to worry about Joe Burrow packing it in. But LSU, as you state, does have to worry about what happens next. And the truth is, Miles Brennan is not nearly as good as Joe Burrow. Will he even be the quarterback next year?
I think he has probably the best chance. There's 2 true freshmen that are coming in with the class of 2020, Max Johnson and T.J. Finley, who is from Ponchatoula. Max is from Georgia. They're very good prospects, not some of the top prospects that they're looking at to get in the class of 2021, but it's going to be a season of adjustment, whoever wins the starting quarterback job. If Brennan wins it, he conceivably could be the starter for 2 years. What LSU needs to do, and this is the next thing Orgeron needs to do, and he's done so much already. I mean, Jesus, he's recruiting all over the country. But they need to find a quarterback in high school who can start for 3 seasons or more. LSU hasn't had a guy start and play well for 3 seasons or more. I can't remember.
Herb Tyler?
Well, Jamarcus Russell was the starter for 3 seasons. He's the last one. But, you know, they've had these 1-year guys and 2-year guys. They need to get past that and have a little more stability at the position.
But wouldn't you rather have 2 years like LSU's had with Joe Burrow than 4 years with a nondescript quarterback?
Well, yeah, I mean, Jefferson was a starter for parts of 4 seasons. You don't want that. But no, Joe Burrow is going to go down as the greatest quarterback they've ever had, and he may be the best quarterback in the pros they ever had, though Y.A. Tittle put up some great numbers, as did Burt Jones. But, you know, if they keep going that, and, you know, they may be going a graduate transfer route again, you know, soon, because that has worked out well for them with Mettenberger, and though he wasn't a graduate transfer, but he was a transfer. Etling was okay as a graduate transfer, so that might be a route. But they need to be able to find a good quarterback who's from high school, and Les Miles was never able to do that.
So Joe Burrow, does he take any chances? He's going to play, we know that, but does he go head on into a linebacker, or does he run out of bounds?
Yes. He doesn't look at things like what we're talking about. He doesn't see it like that. He plays football the old-fashioned way. I mean, they've tried to get him to slide or go down early. His dad's told him that. Archie Manning has told him that. But he's not going to do that. And he's really big. I mean, he's 6'4". He could be a tight end. He could be a safety. I mean, he's big enough to handle that on the college level.
Well, I think when he leaves, it's going to be like Curly Hallman when he came to LSU and he thought every quarterback should play like Brett Favre. There aren't many Joe Burrows, there weren't many Brett Favres, and it's going to be extremely difficult to replicate the kind of success he's had.
No question, no question. The difference is Curly Hallman was able to keep Brett Favre under wraps when he was at Southern Miss. He didn't let him throw that much. It's just the exact opposite with Joe Brady and Joe Burrow, and they're going to keep the same offense. So Miles Brennan is going to have every chance to be very good with this system, and he's still going to have some great receivers. He might not be as good as Burrow, but he could be very good.
Poor Curly Hallman. He just doesn't get any respect.
Well, amazingly, at the time he was hired, he was a better candidate than Coach Orgeron.
Well,
because he was a head coach.
When Curly Hallman was hired at LSU, Nick Saban, who's about the same age, was hired as head coach at Toledo. I think things turned out a little bit better for Nick Saban.
You never know who's going to do well as a coach. Most people didn't think Orgeron was going to do well, and he's doing better than everybody thought, including me.
And Joe Burrow is going to keep on playing, and it looks like he may be playing for 4 more games for the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Thank you, Glenn Guilbeau. We'll return with more Tiger Rag Television after this timeout.
Hello, Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director from the Louisiana Radio Network, as we are back.
Tiger Rag, 6-pack.
As we take a look at 6 hot-button issues involving LSU and college football. First of all, we bring in our couple of panelists for this one. Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins and assistant editor Tyler Nunez. And question number 1 for you guys. Since, Ron, you vote on the Biletnikoff Award, Jamar Chase, one of 3 finalists for that award, which goes to the best wide receiver in the country. Should Jamar Chase get that honor?
Well, I think he should. I guess I'm a bit prejudiced because I see him play every day. I know Jerry Jeudy of Alabama is a great receiver. You know, he probably had an edge going into this year because he played so well last year, and that kind of, you know, pumped him up for this year. But what Jamar Chase has done this year, made clutch catches in almost every game, gone up against defenders, taken the ball away. He very much deserves that award if the voters will kind of put last year aside and look at just this year.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be in the running. He's definitely not just in that finalist position for no reason. I mean, look, he's on pace to get more than 20 touchdown passes this season. To put that in perspective, no receiver's done that since 2013. That's a huge accomplishment for a guy who didn't come on the way a lot of people expected to last year. His ability to go up and get jump balls, his strength, his acumen, his ability to run routes. He's an all-around wide receiver, and I wouldn't be surprised if he took that award home this year.
Well, the other two finalists, Michael Pittman from USC and then CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. All right, question number 2 for the Tiger Rag Television six-pack. Who has played the best on LSU's defense this year? Which defensive player?
Me and Ron were actually talking about this the other day. We kind of landed on Jacoby Stevens. He's been healthy all year. He's had a phenomenal season. He's everywhere. He's a great pass rusher, and that's something that they really needed this year, especially with Kayvon Chase on kind of struggling to get around a lot of edges. I think that Jacoby Stevens, the fact that he's been able to stay healthy and the fact that he's been able to play both in the secondary and also get to the quarterback when necessary, sometimes not even when he's called to go there, I think that's a huge testament to the way he's played this year, and it's been a big help for the Tigers.
Yeah, I think Saturday night, somewhere between Jacoby's first or second or third sacks, we were talking about this. Yes, he has been the most consistent this year. Others have not. People have gotten hurt. Some people have not played well. But this guy's showed up every game, and I thought he's been really steady every game, and has been kind of like just the concrete, the building block of that defense this year. He's been really, really steady.
Question number 3, guys, and I agree with you on Jacoby Stevens. He seems to be the best. 3-sack performance against Arkansas was really good. Question number 3, it was Cream Puff Saturday last week in the SEC. A lot of teams playing, well, for instance, Alabama playing Western Carolina as they get ready for rivalry week. Don't want to play anybody too tough. But is that a reason why the SEC should move to a 9-game schedule when it comes to league play? So maybe you can eliminate some of these very unimportant games when they should be important as we get into the end of November.
I think it all depends on what schedule you're looking at. I mean, there's some schools who naturally have 2 Power 5 opponents on a schedule. I mean, Kentucky plays Louisville every year. Florida plays Florida State every year. Georgia plays Georgia Tech every year. And that's at the end of the season. South Carolina plays Clemson at the end of the year. So for a lot of these schools, and they schedule somebody decent early also, like Georgia playing Notre Dame early this year, they don't really want a 9th conference game. But the biggest advocate for this, go figure, is Nick Saban.
Yeah, as a kid who grew up in Lake Charles watching McNeese games and then went on to cover McNeese, I'm kind of biased here. I think it's good for these FCS schools to go up against these Power 5 programs. A lot of times that's the only way these programs are keeping the lights on. So I really like these smaller games. I think in the case of Alabama, they could just schedule tougher games earlier in the season or at some other point. They're playing 2 of these games a year. That's not necessary. And the one Power 5 program they played outside of the SEC was Duke, who no one really expected to be that good this year with the loss of Daniel Jones. So I think really you can just schedule it and fix this problem. It's not something that the SEC has to come in and fix.
Well, I'm selfish on this topic. I want to see good games at the end of the season that matter. And for the most part, this past Saturday was a snooze fest until Arizona State upset Oregon. So that brings us to question number 4 for the Tiger Rag 6-pack. Now that Oregon is out of playoff contention, who do you like getting that number 4 spot in the college football playoff if it's LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson grabbing the other 3 spots?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. It's really crowded now. Alabama's in that picture. I don't think you can count Utah out just yet. As long as they win out, I think they have a really good shot. But Alabama's probably the favorite right now. If they go in and win the Iron Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised if they backdoored their way in. I know a lot of LSU fans don't want to hear that, but that's just based on recent history, based on the way we've seen things play out in the past. That's how it's gone, and maybe Oklahoma can make a claim there, but right now I'm thinking it's Alabama.
Well, I think it's Alabama too, probably, but I'd like to see Oklahoma just for just for the fact that they've had a good year. I'd like to see Jalen Hurts a chance to play for another national championship. Of course, he's been in a few of them, and of course, Tua came in and won the one a couple of years ago against Georgia. But I guess I'd like to see Oklahoma LSU in that game. As far as playing Alabama again for LSU, LSU players are saying, like, bring it on. We didn't play that well when we beat y'all. So, yeah, I don't think LSU needs to be afraid of Alabama if it happens again because, LSU's, not going to change a lot from their game plan, and they're still not going to score, no points when they play Alabama the second time around.
All right, question number 5 for you guys. Was Coach Ed Orgeron's comments about Arkansas disrespectful when he said there wasn't much celebrating with that game? They were supposed to beat Arkansas, and Arkansas hasn't beaten anybody in a while anyways. Disrespectful comments, Tyler?
I'm going to say no. I think that it's factual. Yeah. The last time we had seen Arkansas out on that field, they were getting stomped by Western Kentucky, and then they lost their coach. I don't think anyone expected Arkansas to go into that game. It was the largest spread in decades in the SEC. I think that it was just a factual comment. Now, that being said, I think that Ed Orgeron has a lot of respect for Arkansas and Lunny and what he's trying to do. It's a tough situation to be in, but I don't think he meant any ill will towards Arkansas. I think he was just stating a fact that there's nothing to celebrate over. They still have 2 games they want to win before getting into the playoffs, and Arkansas was just kind of a road bump on the way to those two games.
Lord have mercy, we live in a weak society of apologies. I mean, everybody's disrespected. You disrespected us by saying that it was no big deal beating us. Well, it really isn't a big deal beating you because you haven't beaten anybody in so long. I mean, you've gone through a ton of coaches to get to this point, and you still don't have anybody any good. Yeah, and Ed apologized today for making it come out wrong. He didn't say exactly the right thing the wrong way, but I don't think he had to apologize, but he did anyway.
All right, question number 6 for the Tiger Rag 6-pack. A quick positive and negative when it comes to LSU basketball after 6 games.
They score a lot. That's a really big positive. Excellent scoring team. They're going to outscore most of the teams they play. Negative, they got to shore up the turnovers. They did well against Rhode Island, but outside of that, it's been a nightmare.
If they run the offense, they win. When they wander away from it and have these periods where they jack up threes aimlessly and just kind of wander away from what they're doing, that's their problem right now, but that'll be fixed.
All right, that does it for the Tiger Rag 6-pack. More of Tiger Rag Television when we come back.
In our interview this week, we have a special guest indeed, the Dean of LSU Athletic Historians, a man who was Sports Information Director at LSU back in the day when Billy Cannon was doing his thing, and then up to the time that Pete Maravich left. Bud Johnson was involved. He was actually the number 2 guy at Sports Information behind Ace Higgins, who's the father of our editor, Ron Higgins. Bud came to work for LSU in 1958, but from 1966 to 71, he was the SID, and those were great times, the golden age of LSU sports that's probably about to be surpassed by this year. And in the year of 1958, Bud Johnson wrote the book about LSU's only perfect season. LSU in 1958 went 11-0. The Tigers have not had a winning football season in every game since then, and some say this is the year. LSU is now 11-0 for 2019 with probably 4 more games to go, Bud Johnson. Does that mean the Tigers can perhaps even surpass the greatness of 1958?
I think they probably have more athletes than that ball club. They only had 36 or 37 players on the squad. So this is a very formidable football team. I can't wait to see them play Georgia.
Well, in those days, they played both ways.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have anybody weighing 350 pounds if they were playing on both sides of the ball. The game's changed quite a bit.
You know what? I can see Joe Burrow as a two-way player.
He could, but,
yeah,
he's not.
Right.
But some of these linemen, they couldn't last the full game.
No.
Now, I noticed when I opened the book, best wishes from number 20, Billy Cannon. Heisman Trophy winner 1959. It doesn't get much better than that as far as having someone sign your book. And in the book, of which Billy, of course, is a prominent part, the world's strongest sprinter and the fastest shot putter. Billy Cannon was one of those guys, if he'd lost 20 pounds, he would have been the fastest man in the world, and if he gained 20, he would have been the strongest man in the world.
He was a versatile athlete. He could have done just about anything he wanted to do if he put his mind to it.
Now, he, of course, became a cult hero, and even today, he is LSU football. Does Joe Burrow, long after we're gone, does he have the same capacity to be a legendary figure?
I think he does, Jim. The players look up to him. They believe in him. They gravitate toward him. That's a gift. Not everybody can do that. Not every quarterback can do that. So, but those players look up to him, and they carried him off the field at Alabama.
Yeah. He's the baby-faced assassin, a good-looking guy, and of course remarkably talented. He came here from Ohio State University. Billy grew up in Baton Rouge. Billy Cannon was born in Philadelphia, Mississippi, but he was Hollywood handsome at the time and had a coach who looked like he came off the silver screen in Paul Dietzel. Today, if they were around in the 24-hour news cycle, Bud, I have a feeling that America would embrace them as well.
I think they would today. But not many passers can complete 80% of their passes.
No.
So I hope that Joe Burrow lives in Baton Rouge, because he can be something special. He can run for any office by now.
He probably can, and I have a feeling he's going to be playing at the next level for quite a while.
Oh, I think he will.
Probably will be the first player taken in the NFL draft, as was Billy Cannon back in the day. And Johnny Robinson, wasn't he the second player taken in the same draft? I think he was.
I don't remember that, but he was drafted by two teams. I think
because we had two leagues.
Yeah, two leagues.
NFL, AFL. And he signed with Kansas City.
He signed with Dallas,
which became Kansas City.
Which became, after a couple of years, it became Kansas City. But some other team drafted him.
I think it was Detroit, actually.
Detroit drafted him, and he took a dim view of cold weather football and chose Dallas as a place to start.
It turned out pretty well for Johnny Robinson, who just entered the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now,
but go beyond Cannon, Robinson, and a few others, and that's a list of the guys that could play in the NFL. You could count them on one hand, I think, from that team. But this ball club has some players.
Oh, there's no doubt. They're as talented as anybody in the country, and that's why LSU is doing so well. Billy Cannon was one of those superhuman guys, a protege of Alvin Roy, who made him into a monster physically. And in 1959, still the most famous play in LSU history, the 89-yard gallop through the Ole Miss defense on the punt return that changed the fate of LSU football forever. And we didn't have the 24-hour news cycle. We didn't have the gadgets then. And after that game, a young sports writer named Peter Finney was trying to find out how many tackles Cannon broke to put in his story, and you helped him out.
He asked me in the press box if I could help him with something. He wanted to spend the night. First thing I had to do was find him a place to sleep. I turned over my little apartment to he and one of his friends. That took care of that request. What he wanted to do the next day was talk to Dietzel and Cannon, and I think he had touched base with both of them. The next thing he wanted to do, and this was a request that he made Sunday morning, he said, "Do you know anybody that has a TV antenna that can pick up a New Orleans station?" And I'm a young guy. I didn't know too many people in Baton Rouge, so I asked around and was directed to a gentleman on Park Boulevard. The antenna is still there. Anyway, this gentleman let two strangers come into his house at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, so Pete could watch the replay of the coach's show. The coach's show would show the replay of the cannon run, and he counted the number of tackles missed by Ole Miss.
How many were missed?
I think he counted 7.
7 tackles missed by the Ole Miss defense.
Right.
As we know, they were the best defense in the country that year.
The thing that Pete got out of this stay, and he did this overnight in Baton Rouge because his competition, the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, had a chance Sunday morning and Monday morning before he ever comes out.
He was with the State's Item.
State's Item.
Yeah.
Hit the streets after 2 editions of the Picayune did. So he came away with something that nobody else had. Cannon told him that he almost let it roll, but the ball bounced right in his hands and he took off.
That's fate.
So that was a story that nobody else knew. Nobody else had that story.
Yeah. Now, you became sports information director officially in 1966, and it's a long time ago, but Bud Johnson got a baptism by fire shortly after you got the job, I believe. The athletic director was actually shot. That had to be a difficult story.
There was nothing in the library to prepare me for that. You know, that was something that happened at night after a party at Bob and Jake's. He had a heart attack on Jefferson Highway, stumbled up to a light and knocked on the window, and it happened to be the window of a motel on Jefferson Highway. Somebody was in there with a prostitute and thought they were being rolled, you know, and the guy fired and hit him.
And shot the LSU athletic director.
Right. I mean, I don't think he knew who he was shooting, but the shot probably saved Jim's life. He'd had a blood clot caused the heart attack, and then he spent about 6 or 8 hours on the operating table.
Well, Jim Corbett, who was the athletic director we were talking about, he's the guy who hired Dietzel. He hired Press Maravich, who gave us Pete Maravich, right?
Dietzel was hired before Jim Corbett was hired. He was hired by the LSU Board of Supervisors. And
Okay.
he was hired first. Corbett was hired maybe a month later.
Corbett backed him, though, when things were not
Oh,
going
yeah.
well.
He was very good about that.
And Jim Corbett gave us the LSU fight song, didn't he?
Yes, he did that. He wrote
Hey Fighting Tigers.
Hey Fighting Tigers.
He wrote it.
No, he had somebody on campus write the lyrics, but he went to the musical. He was on NBC. He went to visit NBC and the NCAA television committee. He was always heavily involved in NCAA television. And while he was in New York, once he went to see the musical Wildcat, and he just loved that song.
With Lucille Ball, yeah.
Yeah, and so he thought it would make a great fight song, and he proceeded to get permission from the people who wrote it to use it as a fight song, and got somebody on campus to write the lyrics.
Well, it's still resonating all these years later. Hey Fighting Tigers. Hey Fighting Tigers win the game today. And they've won a lot of games, 4 games to go. Bud Johnson's predicting a national championship and perhaps the first perfect season since 1958. You wrote the definitive book, and perhaps another one will come out soon about the 2019 team, because it looks like great things are in the offing. Bud Johnson, thank you, and we're back with more Tiger Rag Television after this brief pause. I'm Jim Inkster, and with me is Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins. And November 30th, 1979 may not be a date that sticks in many people's minds, but it was a significant date for LSU football, because that was the date 40 years ago this Saturday that Bo Ryan, Robert Bo Ryan, was hired as head football coach at LSU. He was all of 34 years old, and Ron Higgins was working at Tiger Rag. You remember that day pretty well, don't you?
I really do. I mean, this was a guy that, as they drew closer to the time to hire somebody, his name popped up more and more. What's amazing is that I guess early in that season, he actually wrote Paul Dietzel a letter, which is unheard of now. He wrote Paul Dietzel a letter saying he'd like to be considered for the job. You don't hear that anymore.
No.
You know, and now you have a bunch of search committees and stuff, and he wrote a letter, and I'm sure Dietzel knew about him anyway, and he hired him. It was a big day. It was a fresh start. You know, I mean, Charlie Mack had been there 18 years, and they wanted to go another direction. And I mean, they bring this young guy in there, the youngest coach they had. One of the younger coaches they had, and he dazzled. He really dazzled the Board of Supervisors, which is hard to do.
Yeah, well, he was 34, and he'd already been head coach at North Carolina State for 4 years. He was a great athlete at Ohio State, played football and baseball, went to the College World Series as a baseball player, and he coached with Lou Holtz at a couple of universities. He coached with Frank Broyles at Arkansas. Had a great background, no doubt about it, but we know now that Dietzel's first choice was Bobby Bowden. And if Bobby Bowden had come here, no telling how long he would have stayed, but he was 49 at the time. Ryan was only 34. As we know now, his plane crashed 6 weeks later on. But if he had lived, he would only be 74 years old. He probably would be out of coaching, but to put that in perspective, that's only 6 years older than Nick Saban is right now. LSU's had 10 coaches, counting Charlie McClendon, in the last 40 years. With Bo Ryan, he could have been here a very long time.
I believe he could. He was coming in, he ran the veer, but I mean, it ran a lot of stuff off it. And just his enthusiasm in recruiting. I mean, when he came to Baton Rouge, basically he hit the road recruiting. I don't know if he ever met anybody on the team.
No, Alan Risher was with us a few weeks ago, and Alan said he never met the guy, and he was a starting quarterback. So if he didn't meet him, I doubt that he was meeting other players. He was doing other things at that time. He was recruiting, he was assembling a staff, and then Jerry Stovall had to take that staff, and that put Stovall in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah, I mean, a very uncomfortable position. He had to take all his guys. You know, they weren't very good they're average the first year, not very good the second year. The third year, they brought in Mack Brown as the quarterback's coach, kind of offensive coordinator, which was a savior for Alan Risher, who had a great year. Of course, Mack left to go to, I think, Appalachian State as head coach. He was like a one-year wonder. And, you know, in fact, talking to Alan about Joe Burrow, he said, you know, I look at Joe Burrow's year this year kind of like I went through. I had Mack Brown, and he has Joe Brady came in for 1 year. Hopefully Joe Brady lasts longer than 1 year.
Well, Ryan ran the veer, and LSU had experimented with the veer in the 70s. You know that, and didn't do very well. Could he have made it work better than Charlie McClendon did?
Maybe so. You know, I mean, you never know. I mean, I don't think Mack ever really liked it that much. I think he first started running with Carl Otis Trimble, the first African-American quarterback in LSU history. Tried to run it with Carl Otis Trimble. It was okay. But I don't think Mack ever really got comfortable with it. I mean, he wasn't an eye guy all the time, and never really liked a lot of the option stuff, even though he ran a lot of option early in his career with Freddie Haynes, Nelson Stokely, some other guys in the early 60s he did, but he never really liked the veer that much. It didn't seem like he was comfortable with it.
Well, since 2000, when Saban was hired, LSU's had 20 straight 8-win seasons or more. But between 79, when McClendon left, and 2000, a lot of those years were tough years. There were 8 losing seasons in 11 years under Hallman and Archer and DiNardo. But there were some losing seasons with Stovall, a couple of them. So 10 losing seasons during that period. And some people would argue, perhaps correctly, that Bo Ryan's death really put the program in a tailspin that it did not recover from for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it brought in Bill Arnsparger, who was good, but, you know, he was only here like a couple of years and had enough. Went to Florida as an AD. I mean, that's pretty telling if you want to get out of coaching business, become an AD at another school. You know, and then, you know, Archer took over, had a couple of good years, and then he went down the drain, and then it just kind of went to this tailspin. and it took them a long time to get out of it, and they hired Nick Saban. He's the guy kind of brought them out of the wilderness and kind of back on track and really took them to a level they hadn't been before.
Well, it's hard to imagine a coach like Ryan, who might have been here 30 or 40 years. LSU's won 11 SEC titles, but no coach has ever won more than 2. And Ryan might have won a bunch if he had stayed. And he was well regarded by everybody. That was considered the proverbial grand slam, slam dunk, whatever you want to call it. But Paul Dietzel apparently had gotten a good coach.
Yeah, I mean, Bo played for Woody Hayes, which was a stamp of approval right there. You play for Woody, I mean, you know your football. Again, all the guys, it just checked off. Holtz, Hayes, I mean, guys who are icons in college football, all thought this guy could coach. Well regarded by his players at North Carolina State, well regarded by his assistant coaches. I mean, all of them came here. They didn't have to.
Yeah.
And that tells you something about how much they enjoy coaching for Bo Ryan. Because when Nick Saban came here from Michigan State, I don't think anybody came here. Nobody got on the plane to come with him. But those coaches love Bo Ryan. They are really dedicated to Bo Ryan.
They were. And this was before the 24-hour news cycle. And in those days, we were all trying to get the scoop, and your boss, Steve Myers, thought he had the scoop. He was in Paul Dietzel's office the day before. Dietzel leaves the office. He finds all these phone messages from George Welsh. In those days, your secretary would write down who called, George Welsh. So he reported that George Welsh was going to be the next coach at LSU, and of course, he was not. It was Bo Ryan. Dietzel managed to keep that secret, which was amazing.
It is amazing. Of course, I guess back then you didn't have internet, you didn't have a lot of social media, so you could kind of sneak by on stuff, and they did a tremendous job. I mean, honestly, Bo Ryan was kind of like a name that popped up late, and even when he was hired, some people said, who's Bo Ryan? He wasn't a name. I mean, he was a name among the coaching circle as an up-and-comer, but as far as to the average public, and especially average LSU fan, they had no clue who Bo Ryan was.
Well, he was from Niles, Ohio, and Ohio is now very good to LSU with Joe Burrow, and what might have been had Bo Ryan been the head football coach at LSU. But it all ended January 10th of 1980, just 42 days after he was hired. Ron was there, and of course we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that date. But 40 years ago this week, Bo Ryan was hired as head coach at LSU. And we'll return with more Tiger Rag television after this timeout.
Predictions.
Back on Tiger Rag Television, Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of the Louisiana Radio Network, along with Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins and assistant editor Tyler Nunez. Let's take a look at this weekend's games. It's rivalry week, and one of the biggest rivalries in college football, Michigan and Ohio State. A lot of LSU fans will be plugged into this one. Ohio State is an 8-point favorite. Who do you like, Ron?
It sounds strange that all these LSU fans would be pulling for a former Ole Miss quarterback to beat Ohio State. But I don't think Shea Patterson and Michigan can pull this one off. I think Ohio State knows it's near the end here. They're right there on the doorstep of getting in the playoff, and I just don't see that Michigan's going to win this game.
I got to give credit to Michigan. They're much improved from the team that we saw 6-7 weeks ago. It looked like the wheels were coming off early on, but they've kind of steered the ship in the right direction, and they're looking good. That being said, Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country, and it's not even close. I think they're going to dominate this team, and I think they cover easy.
We've already seen South Carolina pull off one big upset this season. Do they have another one as they take on Clemson? Clemson is a 27.5-point favorite. Tyler?
Yeah, no, not this time. They got that one against Georgia. They're not doing it against Clemson. Clemson's offense is just too potent. There's nothing that South Carolina can do to stop it. As we've seen throughout the season, Georgia's offense was a bit overrated coming into the season, and South Carolina took advantage of that. There's nothing to take advantage of in Clemson's offense. They win this game easy.
I think South Carolina's point of contention in this game is not to get absolutely blown out, which would give their boosters another reason to get rid of Will Muschamp, who hasn't had a great year, at another SEC school. He's running out of schools, been to Florida, been to South Carolina, Auburn's over there as a coordinator. I don't know where he can go to next, but Clemson wins this game. Maybe they'll show a little bit of mercy on him. coaches always do that for coaches they want to keep around for the next year and beat again.
All right, the Iron Bowl. Alabama is a four-point favorite against Auburn. Nick Saban has already said that Auburn is the most talented team they faced this season. So obviously Alabama thinks they're going to be in a pretty big test this Saturday. What do you think in this one, Ron?
You know, I don't know what's in that Coke bottle Nick Saban has at his press conference. I don't know if it's full of Jack Daniels or what, but, you know, Nick trots out these things every week. They're the best team we play, we respect. I get that, but how about a little truth in advertising here? Auburn's got a freshman quarterback. He's going to be good, but not this year. And Auburn's just good enough to get right there, and they're also just good enough to maybe get Gus Malzahn a new job in Arkansas. I don't see Alabama win this game, probably by a couple of touchdowns.
It's kind of intriguing to me because I don't know exactly how Alabama's offense is going to handle Auburn's defense, especially with the absence of Tua Tagovailoa. That being said, I'm not sure Auburn's offense, as Ron mentioned, with Bo Nix, is going to be potent enough to get in the end zone. So I think it's going to be a much lower scoring game than we've seen in previous Iron Bowls, and probably a little bit lower than we expected coming into the season. I do think Alabama has the edge just on talent, but watch out for Auburn's defense. If they force some turnovers, it can get really interesting.
All right, and our final game, LSU, a 16.5-point favorite against Texas A&M. It seems like the Tigers have been ready to play this game since last December after losing to the Aggies in 7 overtimes. I think this one can get actually pretty ugly, guys.
It's going to be definitely a physical game. It's kind of interesting because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean that much. LSU's already clinched a spot in the SEC title, and if they win that game, they're in the playoff, regardless of if they lose this game. But it's so personal after that 7 overtime brawl that they had last year, after the antics that happened after the game. This is a game they've had circled on the calendar. This game is personal. I expect LSU to come out with a lot of fire and dominate the Aggies.
LSU's got everything to gain in this game. You know, you won't see them lose this game as far as look at how the college football playoff can be. Look at that, losing their last regular season game. Texas A&M has nothing to play for. Zip, nothing. I think LSU comes into this game and puts it A&M bad, and there's not going to be any mercy in this one. I think if LSU gets ahead, they're just going to keep going and going and going. That's it for our final picks of the regular season. Next week on Tiger Rag Television, we'll take a look at Championship Saturday games. We'll have more of Tiger Rag TV when we come back.
Thank you for joining us here at Tiger Rag Television. You can catch us same time, same place next week. Joe Burrow and the LSU Tigers are attempting to do something that LSU has not done since 2011, 12-0. Can the Tigers clinch the win and go undefeated? We sure hope so here at Tiger Rag. But of course, we will be discussing that game and the upcoming matchup with Georgia during the SEC Championship as well, because of course we are the Bible of LSU sports. From our Tiger Rag family to yours, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see y'all again next week.